Luigi Gubello. Si chiama.
Okay.
We are also live on Facebook. Ciao mamma.
Okay, sorry for my English. This is my first time in English, and my English is not so good. So, thank you. Okay, this talk is about Russian propaganda. Russian propaganda during the United States election 2016. So some years ago, but it is an important fact because many researchers, many experts agree with the fact that Russia hacked the American election. Okay.
No.
Okay, okay. Who I am? I am Luigi, but maybe you can know me like Ballistica on Twitter. I am a Linux user from many years. I am a Python developer, not so, but I can try to develop in Python. I am a Twitter addicted. I very like Twitter, and my talk is about the analysis of the Twitter dataset. And well, I am a cat lover because I am a nerd, so I love cats. It is a classic. Yes, sorry. Okay, some important dates before start this talk. November 2016, Trump win the election. Okay. Between 16 and 18, many democratic politics and many authorities agree with the fact that Russia tried to hack the election via social network. So in March 2018, there is the big fact about Cambridge Analytica. It is a scandal. Zuckerberg testifies before Congress about this scandal, and in July 538, it is an important site about dataset and analysis, famous for 4 days was analysis, but they predict better than other sites and other experts that Trump can win the election during 2 years ago. In July, the site shares 3 million of tweets of Russian troll, and only 3 months, 4 months then Twitter released the complete dataset of internet research adjacent tweets, and it is a very big dataset with 9 million of tweets, and all the most important American media talked about this. You can see some title. No? Okay. What information has Twitter shared? There are many information about users. So we have some nicknames, some user ID, some creation date, all creation date of this troll account, the numbers of this troll, total numbers, and we have the biography and description. They have written on Twitter. We have the location, so we have main information about the Russian trolls. Information about tweet. For every account, Twitter shared all tweets that they have written, and we have a huge archive of Twitter media, video, photo, meme, many memes about everything. So we have 5 giga about tweets and 300 giga about media. Not? Okay, sorry. What information has Twitter not shared? A lot of accounts are hashed. So for some privacy reason, Twitter have decided to not share the real username, the real user ID. So all accounts that had less 5,000 followers have an hashed ID, an hashed username, and an hashed screen name. This is a problem because it is difficult to recreate the network. There are no information about followers, so we don't know the kind of user that follow the Russian trolls, and the change of any account, we have no information of the change of any account. So many Russian trolls have had changed their username, their nickname, the description, but we have no information about this. This is a problem, and some researchers have recreated the change, but Twitter didn't help them. Okay, to analyze the dataset, I prefer to write my code for different reasons. The main reason is I can check every line, and so I am sure about the final result. There are different kind of approach to analyze a dataset. For example, there is Elasticsearch, Kibana. There are common and open source software, very good, but I prefer to write in Python. I have used these libraries, pandas, to read the dataset, CSV to split the dataset, because 5 giga is a large volume, and so it isn't easy to read this with the common hardware. I use the library LUIGI to try to detect and classify the language of the description of every account in the dataset. Well, BREC is for regex. Emoji to try to extract and analyze the most used emoji. Matplotlib, Word Cloud, and Seaborn are 3 libraries to do graphs. So data are in CSV files, but it is hard for a human read it. So have some plots is help me. Okay, 2 goals. Was there Russian propaganda in Europe, and did the Internet Research Agency try to manipulate information in Italy? These are the 2 questions I try to answer tonight. Why? The dataset is about the unity state election, but it is possible to find main information about a possible propaganda in Europe. Italy it is a special case, then we see why. But in Italy, I haven't found any good readings about the dataset, so I have tried to answer this question. Okay. Okay. Some numbers about dataset. Oh, okay. I hope you can see this plot. There are 4 graphs. In the dataset, we have over 3,000 accounts. It is a large number, and the main account, the accounts were created mainly between 13 and 14. So we have 2 spikes in these years, and it is an important fact because it means that Russians have planned carefully how do propaganda in the United States. So they created the accounts 2 years before the election, and they have the description like a real person, and usually they have a number of followers very common between 100 and 500. So many accounts seems to be real, and for this reason we have understood too late about this propaganda or this disinformation campaign, because it is. Thank you. The most used languages are English, Russian, German, Ukrainian, and Bulgarian, but there are some mistakes in the dataset because classifying language is very complicated. So between Russian and Bulgarian there is one character of different, one different character, and they have the same character. So it isn't easy to classify language for me and for Twitter. There are some mistakes, but English, Russian, and German percentage are good. So we can find that we can read this data and think that Internet Research Agency try to manipulate United States Twitter, Russian Twitter, and German Twitter. Maybe also in Ukrainian they have tried to manipulate the debate. If I don't know if you remember the Crimea problem in 14. There are mainly English account, Russian, and German. So these are the 3 biggest group of accounts. There are Italian in this list for a reason. The most common word in the description are follow, and usually follow is followed by me. So follow me is a classic technique to obtain followers very faster. So these accounts try to obtain followers. There is love, there is conservative, there is life, there is MAGA, and we can read proud, we can read Christian, America, family. So many accounts are conservative, pro-Trump, pro-conservative, but there are also some terms, for example, no laser. Oops, laser. Black Lives Matter, and there is also the word black, and so they try to polarize the user. So they had created two groups of many groups, but usually two opposite groups. In this case, we have the American conservative group of account, and we have the group of opposite. For example, people who follow the movement of Black Lives Matter, and to try to polarize the user in the American Twitter. Thank you. Okay, this is another important graph about the 9 million of breed between 12 and 18. In 2015, the Russian troll brought 3 million of tweets 1 year before the election, and they have generated 30 million of hearts and 25 million of retweets between 16 and 17. So this is there are important numbers because they mean that people trusted to Russian troll. The Russian troll didn't retweet all the Russian troll. The Russian troll retweeted only trusted account, like journalists, like media accounts, and they have followers that trusted them. So have an important impact on the debate in the United States. And it is a curious fact about 16 and 17. You can see the heart. The hearts are more than retweets in these 2 years, but none in these years. Because at the end of 15, Twitter changed its design, and the star become the hat, and the hat have a stronger impact than the star. Only a little symbol have changed the way to read it, are funny, and you trust them. So memes are a perfect way to do a disinformation campaign, and not only for Russian trolls, but every day many accounts do disinformation via meme because they work better. The red lines, so we can see the high impact and the high numbers of accounts that the Russia created. This is a graph about the English tweet by month. So we can see two strategies in this graph. The first period we have many tweets and less retweet, and in a second period between April 16 and April 17, we have a period where the Russian troll did many retweets, but they posted less tweets. Why? Maybe, I'm not sure about this, but I think that the second period is sharing polarizing news. Okay, this is common. They retweet or write about fact with about polarization fact, for example, a terroristic attack or similar. So they can create they can polarize the user in the Twitter trends and sharing daily and common news. So you can think that a real person, because a real person are sharing common news like sports and similar. Meme are incredible. Online we share meme every day. We don't think about the impact, but meme are incredible instruments about to do disinformation campaign. Interaction with the trusted or popular user. Many Russian trolls quoted on or replies to Trump because they hoped to be retweeted or to have a reply, and Trump retweeted and replies to Russian troll. This is this was and this is a problem about the use of Twitter by Trump, but they try to interact with journalists because we trust to journalists. So if a journalist retweet a tweet, that tweet is important, and we maybe trust to the Russian troll tweet because it is sharing by a journalist. Different languages in different places. So there are many accounts in English, but if there are many accounts that retweet French news because they live near Canada, and some accounts retweet in Spanish news or news in Spanish because they live in South of American states, near Mexico, and so they try to be credible and trusted in this way. No. Okay, Russian propaganda in Europe. Okay, after I have seen like Russian troll working in the United States, I have tried to see if they have tried to do a disinformation campaign in Europe. These are the most common European languages in the dataset. We can find German, Italian, Spanish, French, Dutch, and Danish. Okay, and we can see that German have a high number of tweets and retweets, and Italian tweets, and so Italy is in the it is second, but there is an interesting fact about Italian tweets. We have more retweets than tweets. We are a unique case in the dataset. Italian is the only language where retweets are more than tweets. In the Spanish and French, we have more tweets than retweets, and it's important if German and Italian are European languages. Spanish and French are speaking in all the world, in Africa and in the South America or Mexico or Canada. So the Spanish and the French tweets are related to the propaganda in the United States. The German and Italian tweets are related to a propaganda in Europe. Okay, the volume about Dutch and Danish tweet is so lower that we are not interested. Russia have tried to manipulate information in Germany. It is a fact. Many researchers agree with this. We can see that the account were created in October and 15 and July 16, 2 years before German election. So it is a similar pattern to the propaganda in the United States. The volume of accounts is lower than American accounts, but it is normal. German have a number of voters that is lower than Americans. We can see the plot of the tweet by month, and we have two spikes in 16 and 17. In 17 is very big, and why? Because in September 17 in Germany there was the federal election, so it is quite clear that Russian trolls try to have an impact on the information on Twitter in Germany. They used a different approach to Germany respect to the United States, because maybe the Russian troll didn't speak German, so usually they retweet trusted account, or they try to write or write this to journalists, but they didn't create local fake news because it is complicated, and so in Germany there is a different approach to the propaganda. The most used hashtags are Merkel, Erdogan, political parties. We can find AfD, we can find CDU, and maybe another, but I don't find now. It is interesting that AfD, the right party in Germany, is the most used hashtag about political parties. So they SPD. They tried to launch. They tried to retweet information or tweet about the right also in Germany, like in the United States. There are many many hashtags about Brexit. We can find them in the cloud. Britain in out, Brexit and others. all these hashtags are used to polarize the debate on German Twitter. We can find hashtag about Syria and refugees. It is another polarization theme, and some hashtag about Trump. The most retweeted accounts are trust mainstream media and journalists because the Russian troll wanted to be trusted, wanted to be retweeted, so it is not useful to share fake news in Europe, and they preferred to share real newspaper articles about polarization themes. We can see Spiegel, we can see Tagesschau. We can find Welt, and this is a big name, Erdolum. This is important Russian troll. It is the most important Russian troll in Germany. If it is not hashed, so they have more than 5,000 followers. So it was very popular, and for this reason it is a particular account because it means that Russian propaganda worked well also in Europe, also in Germany. It is common on many many German newspapers, because the Russian trolls try to end up on newspaper, because so many people could see them. There are hashed user 1, hashed user 4, because some Russian troll were retweeted in Germany, but they haven't more than 5,000 followers. So the conclusion about Germany is that Russian trolls try to manipulate the information in Germany, especially for the federal election. Maybe the impact of Russian propaganda in Germany is not so good like in the United States, for different reasons, for political reasons, for the cultural reason. And so the question is if the Russian troll try to manipulate information in Italy, because if they had manipulated the information in Germany, maybe they had manipulated the information also in Italy. This is the plot of tweet in Italian. Okay, this is a false positive. They aren't Italian tweet, they are spam tweet, because the classification of Twitter about Twitter is can wrong sometimes. For example, there was an American politician. That your name is Sabato. all tweets about this American politician, are classified like Italian, but they are all in English. So there aren't Italian tweets here, and so we have only a spike of retweet. But the number of retweets is very high, and this is strange, and I am not sure because it is so high. Because there are only 9 coordinate accounts, Italian accounts. So we have seen the American accounts, we have seen the German accounts, and Italian are only this. So it is difficult to think that Russia tried to manipulate the information in Italy, but yes, between March and April in 2017, 9 coordinated accounts have posted many retweets in Italian. They retweeted only they retweeted many media accounts and journalists, like in the German propaganda. Maybe because the Russian troll didn't know Italian language, so they try to share Italian news via retweeted, so they didn't write them. We can see Repubblica, and we can see Repubblica IT because in 17, I think, Repubblica changed his Twitter username, and so we can read to Repubblica. There is Corriere, La Stampa, Agenzia ANSA, Il Post, Globalist, all kinds of newspaper online. Okay, the pattern. There are only 9 accounts that retweeted in Italian tweets, so I try to find the pattern in these accounts to better understand them. There are 2 groups. The first group, 4 accounts, retweeted only in March, and the other accounts have there are 5 accounts that retweeted also in other months. We can see that April and March have the same pattern, not the same numbers of retweets, but the same growth. So we can conclude that there is a schema in these accounts. An interesting fact about these accounts is that they did only retweet except one tweet during the 8th March for the International Women's Day. So every account did one tweet in the 8th March, except one account that brought 2 tweets in the International Women's Day. So they didn't write really in Italian. They only retweeted news in Italian, and it is the unique language in all the dataset where retweet are more than tweets, and it is particular. We can try to find another pattern. This graph is about the day and the hours when the Russian troll, where the Italian Russian troll published their tweets and their retweets. We can see that Tuesday and Wednesday there is a spike of retweet for 8 of these accounts, this, and also for this, except for this. This is a different account. I don't know why. Maybe it is different for some reason. It was a South American professor in his description is wrote about him like a South American professor from Ecuador, if I remember right. Twitter, so maybe this account is a clone from a real person. Conclusion about the Russian propaganda. A sophisticated propaganda campaign took place in the United States before the election in 16. We have seen that many accounts were created between 13 and 14. There was a disinformation campaign also in Germany, and they try to do disinformation during and before the federal election. The subnetwork account that share or retweet Italian news, but there is no impact of this action from these actions. So if you read on Italian newspaper about Russian troll in Italy or similar, well, I think that is not true. But it isn't. But maybe there is other kind of propaganda in Italy, but not Russian propaganda during these years. And okay, I think I finished. Sorry for my English again. You can
Don't worry for your English, I guess.
my English is better than my Fulano, and it is terrible. So.
As we said, everyone is very invited to come and give a talk. If you are worried about your English, you can also tell us. We can prepare and give a talk in Italian as well. Maybe worrying the people, but for sure some people do not understand Italian here as well. So that's why we gave it all in English up to now. Anyway, we have a couple of questions. There are like, I don't know, 600 questions, most of them about Russo, that I will keep it on a side for the moment. A couple of questions. First one, how did Twitter identify who the trolls were?
Okay, this is an interesting question. It is not so clear, but I am quite sure that they crossing data about the IP of this account, and they have crossing the pattern of some of this account, and so they have seen that many accounts are online in the same moment, tweeted in the same moment, and from similar or the same IP. So Twitter have decided that there are some talk, but Twitter haven't shared the information about this, so I am not sure about this.
Okay, but just to be sure, like, do the Russian trolls were real people or just bots?
But real people can be a bot. Some Russian trolls are were real people, so they brought. There are real person that brought some tweets. The original tweet maybe the original tweet written by Russian troll are written by real person, but some accounts like Italian are sure bot. So we have a mixed type of accounts.
Okay. Can you quantify the impact these trolls have had on the American elections? Which also means some people saying they do not know about the volumes of the tweets. How does it relate compared to the global number of tweets?
It is difficult to calculate the impact. I have used the interaction with this tweet, for example, like or tweet, because many retweet maybe can be viewed from by many people, but it is not sure. I am not sure about the impact. I am sure about the number of likes that the tweets have done, and I know that many of retweets and are not made by the trolls. So that's like the rest of the tweets are made by real person, and if a person click on retweet or click on like, he or she have read the tweet. This is important.
Okay. We've got a bunch of questions as well. I would invite all of you, if you're curious, he has a blog as well. Like, this talk was basically 3 blog posts on his blog on gubello.me, where you can read more, explore the data, you can contact him or whatever, and you can also ask the question on his blog. Just to close up, how did you hack Risso?
And
first of all, who was sending you? Who was the political party sending you? How much the PD was giving you?
I received many money for this hack. I am the best server in the world, and it is very difficult hack. And I have used the aperture on my address bar, and I have broken so, and so it's very difficult.
Okay, can you actually disclose something, or maybe better in front of a beer?
Sorry?
Can you go more into details, or it's better in front of a beer later on?
Well, it is a known story, I think. It is not normal. It is a common SQL injection vulnerability. Yes, it is the reason. I don't know. I know, but it happened, and I try to contact the resource staff. They have tried to fix it. I think they fixed it correctly. My report, and but maybe there were many errors, and so we have all seen
what happened.
Yes.
Okay, but now long story short, you're done. Legally wise, you're okay. True. Like no legal problems at the moment.
No, at the moment, no.
Okay. Okay, amazing. Thanks, Luigi. We have lots of work.
Thank you.
Okay, straight to our second speaker before the beer and the Speck. It's also Friday, so I guess we're gonna have a long night. Federico Scrinzi on stage. He's gonna swap his laptop. 1 second.
Sì, mi dispiace per il mio inglese. Finché si scrive in inglese va bene, ma quando si deve parlare è un dramma. Ah, mi dispiace. Ma non è... No, ma non è... Sì, lo so perché ne ho tutto l'altro, scusa.
Okay, second talk of the night, Federico Scrinzi from Google.
Am I bringing hardware security? Because I'm not working with hardware security. But yeah, like Frank asked me like, oh, can you bring a talk about security? And I had some interesting projects, but none of them were like actually ready to give a talk. So I thought, oh, like a lot of people use hardware, like we use hardware every day, but not many people know about hardware security, and it's like perceived as black magic. Like we only write software, and we just rely on the fact that hardware works and does whatever we want. But yeah, maybe these assumptions are not always true. So yeah, like I'm a software person, I don't know hardware. It's complicated, it's a mess, it's like cables and stuff. And it requires to know like some physics, and it's complicated, and I don't want to know about it. I just want to write code, right? But yeah, like, software is as good as the hardware that we have underneath, and the software that we write has to rely on the guarantees that the hardware gives us. And to write good software, we need to actually know what are the guarantees that the hardware gives us, and yeah, we can explore and know what the hardware is supposed to give us and what is supposed to not give us. So you might have heard about a lot of attacks that were published recently on various CPUs, like Meltdown or Spectre. Essentially, I think all of these were kind of a result of hardware people working on hardware and software people working on software, and they would never talk to each other. And people made their wrong assumptions. Like, hardware people just thought, okay, like, the software guys only want software to be fast, and we can maybe tweak some things and break some guarantees, but they're never gonna know. And vice versa, the software folks just yeah, like, assumed some things of the hardware that were not really true. So yeah, as I said before, like, if we know the limitations that the hardware has, then we can build better products. And if you work in hardware, it's the same vice versa, I guess. So why do we need secure hardware? You might have smart cards in your wallet, like probably everyone uses credit cards. You also have smart cards for example, transportation. Maybe like you put money in your card and you swipe it when you take the bus, and then money goes gets deducted from your card. Or maybe you use some pay TV system like I don't know, Sky or whatever people watch these days. I don't know. And maybe you play some console like I don't know, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, whatever. And producers of pay TV and gaming consoles don't want pirate games. They want to protect the ecosystem, and this is also good, I guess, for producers of games because they also need to get paid somehow. Then maybe like nowadays, like we have IoT sensors, maybe for temperature or like other kind of monitoring of our house. We want this communication to be secure. Maybe some of you also have bitcoins, and if you want to store them, you want like some secure hardware that even if it gets stolen, then people are not supposed to be able to take your bitcoins out. And maybe some of you use security keys, so whenever you do login into Google or whatever, Facebook, whatever you use, you have a security key that you can touch. Only like if people steal your password, they cannot log in because they don't have the key. So yeah, most of these devices have like need some security guarantee, and usually we can say that either they contain secrets that an attacker could extract and then break the threat model of this hardware, or maybe they have some protection to restrict the use case, like for example the gaming consoles. And like all of this hardware, even a smart card, essentially is a computer. They run code. They're just smaller, basically. So maybe we can study them a bit and break some of the properties that we give for granted, but maybe it's not so true. So when we play with hardware, we can be creative with the touch surface. Like for example, an easy way is not only finding bugs in software, but maybe you can just open the hardware and see if there are some pins where you can connect, and there are serial lines, and you can get like a console on the device. Like this is quite common for routers, for example. If you open a router, usually you can have some pins that you can connect to, and you get like a shell on the router. If the hardware is produced properly, and it needs some security properties, then usually these pins are not accessible anymore. But sometimes people make mistakes and they're still there. Like they are useful for debugging, so sometimes they're not there. But yeah, then with hardware we can do much more. So not only we can like open it and study the software that runs on it, but also we can do other stuff. Like for example, what can we get from power consumption of the hardware? Like can we get some information of what the hardware is doing from how much power is draining? Or maybe from the heat. Like if the hardware is producing more heat, then it's maybe doing some operation. If it's producing less heat, then it's maybe doing another operation. The same also can be true for electromagnetic emissions. So in some cases, hardware is producing more electromagnetic emission or less. And also we can play with the CPU and other components of the hardware that we have. And for example, shoot some strong light on the CPU and see what happens, how the CPU reacts. Or maybe what happens if we like cut the power at a specific time, how does the CPU react? This is like out of the specifications of the maybe a microcontroller that we buy. On the data sheet, it would say like this hardware only works under these conditions, but what happens if we change the conditions? Maybe we can like put it in the oven, or maybe give it a different clock, and then we can play with this and see what happens. So you might have heard of side channel attacks. The idea of measuring, for example, power consumption is one possible side channel attack. And basically the main idea is to measure some side effects of the hardware in order to understand what it's doing and maybe extract some secrets. Like power is a fairly common side channel. So this for example, is a graph of power consumption of a microcontroller that is doing RSA. RSA is a cryptographic algorithm that basically relies on exponentiation. And we have base, which is our message, and we exponentiate to a secret. And this paper is like very old, from I think 94 or something like that. And basically, exponentiation is usually implemented with a square and multiply algorithm. When the exponent has a 1, we do I guess square and multiply. And when there is a 0, only square. And you can actually see from the power consumption what the secret is. So basically the private key of RSA. And this looks like weird and very hard to do, but in fact it is not. And we're going to see it later. Yeah, basically in this case the security of RSA can be broken, not because the algorithm has a problem, but because we can measure the power of the device and we have physical access to it. Another issue that we can exploit is that the hardware relies on some external things that we have to provide it, for example, power or a clock. And if we put the hardware in some unspecified conditions that are not standard, then we can break how the hardware behaves. For example, with voltage glitching, the idea is that we drop the power to a very specific point. With clock glitching, we give like a wrong clock, basically, to the device to make it go out with a different phase. But another thing we can do is, for example, shoot lasers, because CPUs are actually sensitive. They are quite sensitive to photons. Or maybe put it in an environment with a lot of heat or a lot of cold. And this allows us to generate bugs even when the software is perfect. So for example, let's say we have this software that has a debug mode, but the debug mode is disabled when the device is produced, and it's only used for testing purposes. But there's still this code, and maybe like there's a way that we can execute this key that gives us some secret, even though if we look at code, then the code is perfect. And yeah, you might think like, this is like super complicated and like it's impossible. The equipment might be super expensive, and like only the NSA can do this, and you need like some state agency level lab, or maybe like you need a lot of knowledge and crazy skills to do this, or maybe like that it's not really possible to do this in practice. That is just some stuff that academics do, and they break RSA and just for fun, and that's it. So this is actually not true. Actually, some people at 35C3, which is the Chaos Communication Congress, showed that it's possible to do some side-channel attacks on an Arduino with 5 years of equipment, which is quite impressive, I think. And this year at Black Hat, Chip.fail, which is another group, showed how to do glitching for, I think it was voltage glitching, for just $5. And we don't need, you don't need some crazy lab. You just need a hardware like this one, which is a chip whisperer, and you can get it for, I think it goes for $250 now. And you can do security, hardware security research at home. If you want to learn more on the topic, I suggest to check Live Overflow videos. He's a really cool guy, and he has a series of videos on hardware security, where he talks about side-channel attacks and glitching. And this is actually something that works in practice. For example, the very same hardware that I have here was used to break the security of the Nintendo Switch. Like how the guys that did this performed the attack was that they got a dev kit for the NVIDIA Tegra, which is the device that is that was used for, let's say, it's like the foundation of the Switch. And they wanted to extract a secret firmware that this NVIDIA Tegra runs, and they used the chip whisperer to glitch a check into the, like on this NVIDIA Tegra, to allow the extraction of the boot ROM. And then they reverse engineered the boot ROM and found the bug. Yeah, similar attacks were performed on security keys or some drawing tablets to extract the firmware. So yeah, now I have a demo here that I can show you. So as I said, Chip Whisperer goes for about $250, but it looks like a new version of it will be cheaper, and it's coming out soon. This hardware was made by Colin O'Flynn, who is a security researcher, and he actually provided this hardware because I participated in the competition and I got it from him. So this hardware can be used with an open source toolchain. It's basically a FPGA with an analog to digital converter. So you can think of it as basically an oscilloscope with some other features. It allows you to do power analysis and voltage and clock glitching. So for the first demo, we have this simple code that basically is just taking a password and doing a check character by character of the password. And if the password is correct, then it will tell us access granted, otherwise it will say password failed. So let's see if this works. So to use the Chip Whisperer, you can use how's it called now, the Jupyter notebook. Previously it was called, I guess, Python notebook. This is just some setup stage. This step is compiling the firmware that we're going to run, which is running the code that we saw before in the slide. Then we have to run some setup and program the microcontroller that is running here with the code that I just showed you. And then we can start measuring power. So for example, let's say we input a wrong password. In this case, it's here, it's just some X, because we don't know the password. And then it will say, there is some garbage because I guess the synchronization with the serial line is not working properly. But yeah, this program is running this Speck&Tech 3000 and it's printing some stuff and asking for password, but the password is wrong. And I can flip that. This is like the power consumption that we get, which is like we can look at it and say, oh, it's garbage, I don't know what it is. Then we can try different letters. So now I know what the password is, so I can try to see what happens if I insert a correct letter as first letter and all the rest are X's that are wrong. So in this case, the password is still broken, like the password is wrong.
So can you read the execution stuff?
Yeah, I just put some brackets.
I know, but
So it's just SCRINZI is pure wine, checking polenta, adding some back. Yeah. That's some stupid stuff. But yeah, and now we get a new graph. But if we compare them, let's actually have it here. So in the second example, we have like an additional peak. As you can see here, there's no peak. There is a peak. This is because we got one letter right. So the microcontroller used more power because it had to track an additional letter now. And yeah, if we go on, for example, we enter almost the correct password. So we enter Speck&X, which sounds like SpaceX, but it's not. So the password is wrong. But now if we plot the power consumption, then we see actually 4 peaks. We can see maybe in the slide just to get a comparison. So no peak, 1 peak, then 4 peaks, and if we try the correct password, we get 5 peaks. I can show you now. So in this case, we enter. Oh, I don't know why this says password page. Here. Access granted working. Yeah, I guess it's a bit out of sync. But yeah, in this case, the password spec was accepted. And yeah, if we plot, then we see that there are 5 peaks. And this is because we guessed 5 characters correctly. So yeah, what this means is that basically, if let's say we have some hardware that gets a password and we don't know the password, then instead of having to do a full brute force, we can basically brute force the password character by character. And this reduces the search space that we have to try, because instead of trying, for example, the alphabet to the power of the length, then we can just try the alphabet times the length. So a second demo is a similar piece of code. So in this case, we're also checking the password. And let's say that in this case we don't know the password, and we can try to do glitching to basically break this track. And even if we input a wrong password, then it will still get validated by the hacker. So yeah, maybe you're not very familiar with hardware and you've never heard of clock. So what is clock? Essentially, usually this is the hardware needs some periodic signal that is used basically to, let's say, give a rhythm to the CPU. And so, for example, usually in microcontrollers you have some pipelining, such that for like every time that this clock signal goes high, then you load an instruction that executes the previous one. So, for example, here at the beginning we load an instruction, and then at the second step we load the second instruction and execute the first, and so on. So now, if we give a wrong signal to the wrong clock signal to the microcontroller, then we might have we might cause a situation where the microcontroller doesn't have enough time to execute the instruction, and in this case the instruction will get skipped. So even if we have some perfect code, then we can basically generate bugs in the code because the hardware will not behave properly and it will skip instructions. So we can. Oh wait, first I have to disconnect the. Okay, so now we can try the second demo. So as before, we have to first connect to the microcontroller and compile the code and program the memory of this microcontroller with the program that I showed you before, which is basically this password check. And now we can try. So if we enter the correct password, which is spec, then we get the output is welcome, and it asks for the password again. This is basically it asking for a password in a while loop. So it's continuously asking for a password. If we input the correct one, we get welcome. And if we enter the wrong one, so X, we get denied and then asks for a password again. So now what we can do is, there's a bunch of code that basically what it does, it tries to give a wrong clock with by trying possible combinations of the width of this strange clock that we give it. So if we go, like if you look at the slide here, we can basically vary the width of this clock signal, or we can also variate the offset. So where this is happening in this period, and we don't know exactly at which point to do this, but we can just try like all possible combinations until maybe we're lucky and we manage to have the CPU skip the right instruction, and even if we input the wrong password, we still get welcome. So yeah, this is basically what it's doing. There's some piece of code that checks that if we get welcome in the response, then we save these parameters, and we just print a successful glitch. So now we can run it. So sometimes we get this timeout happen during acquisition because the chip might be crashing, because we might be giving it a wrong signal, so something weird will happen and it might reset. But now we got lucky and we got a successful glitch. In this case, the output was welcome, even though if you look at the code, the only thing that we send is X. So yeah, in this case we got a successful glitch, and this is like a similar attack that was used on for example, on the Nintendo Switch. In that case, they wanted to extract this secret boot ROM from the Tegra, and they basically glitched this check because the software was not allowing to get to read the memory where the boot ROM was. But yeah, with a glitch, then you can skip this check and still be able to read the memory. So yeah, I had some slides just in case the demo wasn't working, but yeah, basically what we did, we tried all possible combinations of clock delay and the offset. So yeah, then we tried to send X all the time until the attack is successful, and then we get this welcome message. This happens of course because the CPU misbehaves and skips instructions because we give the wrong clock to it. So yeah, this just in case the demo did not work. So I'm a software person, so hardware for me is just also black magic, but I'm trying to learn a bit more. But yeah, for my master thesis, what I did was try to take some techniques that I used for hardware, like for analyzing hardware, and applying it to software. So the idea with hardware is that you treat it as a black box. So yeah, you don't know what the hardware is doing, but you can still, for example, measure the power and some side channels that the hardware is doing. And we can do the same for software, in case we have, for example, some heavily obfuscated software, like malware or maybe some DRM system, like the thing that decrypts music when you listen to Spotify or watch Netflix. And this, the first example is DS algorithm, which is a cryptographic algorithm. This was obfuscated with some automatic obfuscators. But if we just look at the entropy and the randomness of the data, we see like some patterns. And these are, if you count them, are actually 16 patterns. And this is because DES is basically applying the same algorithm 16 times. And so just by looking at this, we see that DES was applied 2 times, and we actually see where every round of DES is happening, only by plotting entropy and randomness of the memory. The second example is AES-128, which is another cryptographic algorithm. In this case, this plot is autocorrelation of memory accesses. So how autocorrelation works is basically that you plot accesses in memory on this axis and on this other axis, and then you see if the basically every combination of one portion of the graph here is that correlates with the portion of the graph here. So this gives us this nice pattern. But basically, what this means is that AS was applied 4 times, and for every time AS was applied, you can actually see the boxes that represent every round of AS. And AS has 10 rounds, if I remember correctly. So if you count, it should be 10. Like the small squares should be 10. The big squares are just the whole AS round, the whole AS execution. So yeah, how can we prevent all of this? Because I described like a terrible world where every hardware is broken. And we can actually make secure hardware. So there are various countermeasures to make hardware secure. So for example, against side channel attacks, what we can do is just put some random logic that drains power and tries to flatten out power consumption. So we don't like it's harder to see to get correlation between the power consumption and what the microcontroller is actually doing. Another possibility is to just put more capacitors to flatten out power consumption, or maybe just add some random jitters, or maybe like in case of voltage glitching, you can have voltage sensors that when there is a drop in voltage, maybe the secret key gets deleted or the hardware will be rebooted, so it will not be possible to perform this kind of attacks. For preventing clock glitching, you might have your own clock generator inside the microcontroller. Another option is to have tamper-resistant enclosures. So, for example, on credit cards, at least on some, there's like some like a grid of like a sort of circuit grid inside it. So if we try to remove the plastic on the credit card, then this grid will be damaged. And then when we try to boot the credit card, then it will detect this and it will just delete the secrets. So we cannot like open it and like study it from close. Another countermeasure is harden the software. So we can write software in a way that it makes glitching or power analysis more difficult. So for example, for glitching, we can skip instructions, or maybe with voltage glitching, we can flip bits in memory. And one trick is, instead of using like it's very hard to flip all the bits exactly. Like usually you get some random flips, and if you use these patterns, then it's harder to basically create these very specific flips. Another possibility is to have extra integrity checks. So we can, for example, run every check twice, or at some point in the program, like read the code of the program and make sure that every instruction was executed. Maybe just like count the instruction, like check the instruction counter to make sure that every instruction was executed. Also, another trick is that if instructions get skipped, then usually the first branch of the if is executed. So if we put the sensitive code in else, then it's harder to glitch. And these are all tricks that make code very ugly, but at the same time they make it harder to attack. So yeah, this was all. So as a summary, so when dealing with hardware and when we want to make secure hardware, we have to think differently, because there's like many more attacks that we can do, not only like the regular software attacks, or maybe sometimes even web attacks, because sometimes this hardware runs the web servers, and maybe you can do even SQL injection on this hardware. But we can also do like more creative attacks. These attacks are cheap. You can do them with hardware like this one, like the chip whisperer. And there are many tools out there that you can use to play with, and there are many tutorials on YouTube that you can watch and learn about it. And and yeah, there are also some countermeasures that you can apply to your code and to your hardware to make it more robust and make it much harder to attack. So yeah, thank you. I hope this was interesting. Thank you very much.
Okay, couple of questions to you as well. First of all, this is super scary, especially moving towards an IoT-based life, where basically cars and whatever is connected. This is super shitty. Questions. Do you have examples of creative hardware attacks that have been successful in obtaining delicate informations?
Yeah, well, I showed the example of Nintendo Switch. There are like a very creative hardware-related attack that I liked a lot. It was published a few years ago. Was regarding cars, where you have a key that when you're close to the car, then the car will open. So what the attack was? Yeah, the attack was basically that these criminals created a relay between, let's say you're sitting in a bar and a receiver is next to you in the bar, and then they have another receiver close to the car. So basically, the data is transmitted, and the data is relayed between you that are far away and your car, and the car opens. So a countermeasure for this is very clever. Is to only accept maximum delay in the communication. That is usually the delay that you get because of physics, like from the distance between you and the car. So if the delay is higher than that, then it means that an attack is going on. So yeah, I think that's like a smart fix and nice attack.
And more stuff can be read also on these resources, I guess. Are there hardware producers trying to counter these glitches? Basically, random false positives for the first example.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, the company where I worked and I did my internship this year does hardware security evaluations. So they basically get hardware before, or yeah, from vendors basically, and they try to find bugs, like find weak spots basically. And there are many other companies that do that. So yeah, vendors definitely try to test the security of the product and make sure that they are robust. At least some vendors, not all of them.
Do you think that there are other high-risk systems like trains, airplanes, ships, and cars that can actually suffer from these problems?
Yes, but I think in that case the threat model is different because you usually don't enter like a cabin of the train, and if you have a physical access to the electronics of the train, then you can probably just do other stuff like put a bomb or whatever. Like for cars, it's a bit different because, for example, for Teslas or other cars with a lot of electronics, then it might be interesting to get root on the car. So yeah, in that case, I think they used some hardware-related attacks. I'm not an expert, but I guess.
Okay, cool. There's like more questions about, for example, what OS are you using?
Oh, this is just Ubuntu.
No, the US on your laptop, I suppose.
Yeah, it's just Ubuntu.
Ubuntu, okay, I think. Yeah, and a number of personal questions like how is it working at Google that people will ask you probably in front of Mia in a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Thanks again to our speaker.
Thank you.
Okay, it's 10:30. It's almost time for party night for Friday. I expect many of you stopped in Trento for the clubbing or a number of offers that we have. Anyway, I didn't stress enough today, but as you can imagine, we pay for this venue, we pay for the beer and for the food that we provide to you. So donation is very welcome to sustain the community. And we see each other probably in November. We are working on a couple of events, but if you want to suggest a topic or talk or whatever, feel free to email us. You know where to go. Cheers, have a good night.